The biggest race on Saturday happens in Bensalem, Pennsylvania, one of my old stomping grounds, in fact, and it's the $1 million Grade 1 Pennsylvania Derby. James Scully joining me, Scott Shapiro here to discuss the big race for 3-year-olds at 1 1/8. And James, Epicenter's not in this race, but a lot of the top 3-year-olds are for sure.
Yeah, and I think Epicenter's really separated itself from the pack and the Jim Dandy and Travers, but you're right. There's a lot of still good 3-year-olds remaining this year, and we've got almost all of them with Taiba, Cyberknife, Zandon. It's a really good race. I thought it was a good betting race, and we're on 2 different horses. I think that's a good example.
No, I agree. This race seems to pull a strong field just about every year, including last year when Hot Rod Charlie got the job done for trainer Doug O'Neill. Now, James, let's talk a little bit about the way the race shapes up in terms of pace. Do you see there being a chaotic or contentious early pace, or maybe more of a moderate one?
I'm saying it's going to be, I don't know if it's going to be contentious, because I do think We the People is going to be like on a short lead, but I think it's a situation, and we saw this in the Haskell, where they all bunched up on the far turn, going in the far turn, because you have Cyberknife, Taiba, even Simplification, and White Abario being drawn far outside. People forget, like earlier this year in those races, the Holy Bull and Florida Derby, he's up like pressing the pace, so he could be hustled a little bit from out there. So I think those horses will be right behind We the People, and it's going to really, a contentious battle could develop by the start of the far turn.
Yeah, I think it'll be honest. I don't see it being too crazy. Probably pretty fair race shape. Let's talk a little bit about Taiba, James. He and Cyberknife, the 1-2 finishers in the Haskell. It was Cyberknife coming up the rail and getting the best of Taiba. He's a tough horse to figure out. He was so brilliant throughout his career, not a great workhorse. And that effort in the Haskell after the real poor performance in the Derby, a little bit tough to figure out. It looked like he was tired. Then he re-rallied. I'm not sure if that was a matter of the other horses tiring, making him looking like he finished, or if he's just a horse that kind of stops and goes. What are your thoughts?
Well, I thought he was definitely a horse that stopped and go in the Haskell in a sense. I just worry a little bit. That Derby came only in his 3rd start, and he got beaten pretty badly that day. And to come back and run in that Haskell like he did, you're right. It looked like I didn't think he was going to hit the board on the far turn. He came under a full rod from Mike Smith, and then he surged again. Looked like he was going to win in mid-stretch, and then he just was out of gas late, and Cyberknife nailed him on the wire. So that wasn't a real encouraging performance. And I would have liked to seen him come back and not wait 2 months to run in this spot here. So I'm a little bit leery of him. I need to see another good race from him before I'm willing to back him at short odds, because one thing's for sure, he's going to get hammered down. He's 5-2 on the morning line, but he's going to be shorter than that at post-time Taiba.
Right. Bob Baffert's won this race 3 times. I saw him quoted as saying this horse is just finally starting to figure things out. Obviously, a ton of talent. They spent $1.7 million, but a little quirky, a little hard to figure out. Let's talk next about Cyberknife, James. Cyberknife really seems like a horse that is starting to figure things out, or actually has figured things out over his last couple starts after having some obvious physical, talent, but struggling mentally. Where do you stand on Cyberknife?
Well, to me, it's interesting what kind of trip he's going to get with Florent Giroux. We the People is drawn outside him. You got all these, I think, like pressers like drawn outside him too. So he could be, it was interesting in the Haskell. He dropped back off the pace. He was another horse that was under a rod on the far turn. I thought he might be in trouble, and then he really surged in the stretch. In the Travers, he went right to the lead and set the pace. He's going to have to work out a trip, but you're right. He's extremely hard knocking now. I think his form has improved significantly since the spring, because he wasn't running real fast even when he was winning the Arkansas Derby, and he's a horse you have to respect. I think a top 3 placing is more what I was thinking from a betting perspective, but I definitely wouldn't be surprised if Cyberknife got it done.
He's the one I landed on, not a super strong opinion, and probably going to be the clear second choice, and maybe even a coach favorite, but probably Taiba will end up going off the favorite. I think he's shown some versatility, gone to the lead from the inside, and really, he was well beaten by Epicenter, obviously, but holding off the rest of the field, I thought was noteworthy, and just appears to be a horse in the right, right form cycle at the moment. Brad Cox was kind of not originally planning to come to this race, and the horse was doing well. Hopefully, Florent Giroux can angle off the inside and sit just off We the People. If not, he'll have to work out a trip from the inside, which he's proven he can do at this point in his career, but for a while, it wouldn't be the place you would want him to be.
I agree with those points completely. I would have bet against him out being second or third in the Travers at the top of the stretch. He was dead game to hold Zandon and Rich Strike off for the place. And that is always a good sign. A horse is training so well. The trainer's like, I'm going to run in this race because of how he's training. So 2 good points by you on Cyberknife, Scott.
Well, now you're on Zandon, a horse that I was on in the Kentucky Derby. Tell me why you like this horse, why he's going to be able to get by Cyberknife and the rest of the field in this spot.
I think he's going to really benefit from the Jim Dandy and the Travers effort. Now, the Jim Dandy, he ran I thought, terrific effort. He gets beat a length and a half by Cyberknife, by Epicenter, who's a top 3-year-old. That race was in 1.1 miles. I do think 1.25 miles is a little bit too far for him. But to me, Zandon was so lightly raced earlier this season. He had 1 hard race at 2 in the Remsen. That Risen Star, he broke poorly, just sort of, ran evenly. And then he thrived in the Bluegrass. I thought he ran well in the Derby. He was poised for a big summer. And then all of a sudden he got almost 3 months off. So they're almost starting again. And what I like about him is that his figures have risen. He was running numbers, Bristnet speed numbers in like the upper 90s, low hundreds earlier this year. He ran a 105, 106 in the last 2 efforts. And I know people have speculated that Zandon might be better at less ground. I saw somebody we respect who said they're looking forward to betting him at less distance. But I think that rail draw is going to enable Joel Rosario to save ground. And I think 1.1 miles is with 100% within his scope. His best race of his career came at 1.1 miles in the Bluegrass. His second best race arguably came in the Jim Dandy at 1.1 miles. So I think 1.1 miles fits him. He gets that right stalking trip where he's saving ground from the rail. And I look for him to produce a big run in the final furlongs.
He certainly will be happy not to see Epicenter. He struggled to get by that one, no matter the pace or race dynamics. I'm a little concerned that he's a horse that struggles to run by horses unless the ride is perfectly timed. I definitely thought he should have gone by Cyberknife in the Travers, but maybe it was the 1.25 mile distance. It's interesting. Joel Rosario jumps back aboard. He was only on him once. It was his debut effort with a win at 6 furlongs at Belmont. He's a horse I like more underneath. Anybody else you're looking forward to maybe including underneath Zandon in the exotics at a little bit of a better price than the horses we've mentioned?
Well, one thing I definitely, it's interesting to see these Florida horses in here, Wida Barrio and Simplification. I'm just not too keen on Simplification. Wida Barrio is a horse to me that just, for whatever reason, didn't run in the Haskell, but I could see him bouncing back with a little bit of a better effort and hitting the board underneath. And at 8-1 on the morning line, he's the kind of vertical exotic horse I would use underneath Wida Barrio.
Okay. And I'm going to look to We the People, who you talked about, who could be loose on the lead, hasn't gotten back to that dominant effort over the good going in the Peter Pan, but having Flavian Pratt and being loose on the lead could allow him to stick around. And Tawny Port, the other Brad Cox runner, is a horse that I respect, put forth a much the best career Brisnet speed rating last time out in the Jim Dandy. He was very much competitive with Epicenter, Zandon, and of course, early voting, earning that 105 number. And I think he's set up. It looks like Brad Cox has kind of pointed him to this race, skipping the Travers. So Tawny Port with Irad Ortiz, an interesting underneath play for me in this year's Pennsylvania Derby, where Bob Baffert is favored to try to win his 4th rendition of this race. But either way, no matter who you like, get involved at TwinSpires. Best of luck.